Yeah, it's Charlie Mosler reading some poetry, and you're going to be reading In Poison at the YWHA on Tuesday, January 13th. Coming up next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. That's at 760 Northfield Avenue in West Orange. And you can call 201-736-3200 for information. And the best thing about this is the price.
Thanks a lot.
Look at the price on here. $1. And that's only a suggested contribution. I mean, if you're really broke, I'm sure if you're really broke and you turn your pockets inside, I'm sure the organizer will let you in to listen to Charlie and Penny Harder, who is also reading that night. Yeah, the weather just does kind of average out, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you.
Especially at the shore.
Yeah, there's a few things hit me there, and you'll never know what got you. A little bit of justifiable paranoia in there. The pacing I wanted to mention, the pacing of these poems has to do with the fact that you often read these with bands.
Whenever I can. In fact, a few weeks ago I did 3 whole sets with Tom McDowell, a guitar player, at a little bar in New Brunswick, and it was just like being a singer with situation of a Friday night in a bar, and I just started doing things with Tom. We'd done this a few times before at that particular bar, which I guess I can mention, can I?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Pizza Pino in New Brunswick, little tiny bar. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So every time I get a chance, I work with musicians.
Who themselves aren't working enough to want to take on a poet, take a poet around with them all the time.
Well, it used to be my own band, you know. When I was doing in the 1970s, when I was doing the college concerts, I put together pickup bands of name and semi-name musicians, including, let's see, Harry Leahy, Don Friedman, Vic Juris, Terry Silverlight, pretty well-known players.
Teresa, the drummer, right?
That's right. That's Barry Miles' brother.
Oh, he is?
Mm-hmm.
I just played something.
Terry's a fine drummer.
Yes, it was a good album, too. So a lot of night stuff here. I was thinking the other day, I went to the city. I've been to the city you've been in the city thousands of times. I've slept in the city. I've worked in the city. I'm used to it. I'm still afraid of subways, especially when you think that you're sitting in the subway car now and like 10 black kids are going to come out of one end and 10 white kids out of the other chanting Howard Beach, and you're in the middle. But the other thing that all poets have in common, I think, when you go to New York City, is a note of what I saw here. If I'm at Penn Station and I see a midget sitting on the seat there, sitting cross-legged, wearing a cowboy hat, smoking 2 cigarettes at once, I have to look. I have to look at the guy. I can't be cool about that. I've got to look at this guy. And that's where these poems come from. You have to look.
Well, there's a funny story about that. When I did the one Entitlements, which is about the man we saw sleeping by the wheelchair, that was, as the poem says, on 8th Avenue right south of 30th, and we had just been leaving Planet, which is a recording studio, and Artie never noticed it. I was walking down the street with Artie, and he never noticed it. And I'm always seeing things out of the corner of my eye that way. And by the way, secret of survival is no eye contact in the city.
You have to look without making the eye contact.
Exactly, yes.
Especially now on the subways where, you can't feed the world. I can't feed the world on my salary. And when you come up to a stop and some guy comes through shaking a can, and then the next stop he gets off, somebody else comes on and comes through shaking a can.
Recently I've found that they're quite gracious about being turned down. In fact, the one night, the one where I noticed everybody was saying God bless you when you turned them down, I gave some money to one guy and 2 or 3 different people at the end of the block thanked me for giving him money, which I thought was really strange. I guess, as I say, I think it's part of survival. They're polite because it's a way that they stay alive. It's kind of frightening, though. Something else I thought was scary, I saw in the paper a couple of weeks ago. 1 out of 5, I think it is, of the people who live in the streets have jobs. They just can't afford a place to live.
I can see, yeah, that's understandable.
Well, $1,000 a month is not an outrageous rent in New York for a studio apartment. I don't know who can afford that, but...
Well, I can't. That's why I'm not living. That's why I'm not living in New York City. Nor do very many people that I know who do art.
It helps to be in a rent-controlled apartment that you've had for 2 generations.
Yeah, and ecology. You're writing ecology poems now. This means you're getting up. This means you might be getting up in the morning. You know, when I write at night also. And one of the nice things is that if I'm sitting up at 2 a.m. writing, I often figure that you're probably sitting up at 2 a.m. writing if you're not driving around New York City somewhere, you know, coming from a gig or something.
Oh yeah, I write late at night. I also rehearse late at night. But the ecology stuff comes from living, well, okay. Where I live, the aquifer, which is where the water you drink comes from, is in limestone caves underneath. And somebody dumps some chemical one place and it can pop up 4 miles away and you're drinking it. And the last I heard, the drinking water in my town has to have a chlorinated hydrocarbon carcinogen filtered out of it. So yes, I'm very sensitive to that.
Filtered out of it to standards,
exactly.
to EPA standards.
Yeah, and you often wonder what the filter is working like at the end of the month, or at least I do.
Right. Yeah. If the guy's even there, sometimes I noticed in the news the last few months they found absentee treatment plants where things go wrong. They don't find out about it for a few hours, which is fun when the well, it isn't what you see. I mean, the brown water is just that's just rust most of the time, but it's the stuff you don't see.
Water's frightening because, for instance, just in purifying water, I heard somebody on, I guess it was Philadelphia Public Radio, and man was discussing the problems of purifying water, and there's going to be 1 case of liver cancer per 1.5 million people just for using chlorine to purify water. Okay, because it forms, I don't know, carbontet or trichloroethylene or chloroform or one of those nasty things, and it's a carcinogen which gets at your liver. So they figure that the trade-off is a good trade-off because it saves a lot of people dying of something else. But it's not the most charming thought in the world when you take a glass of water. This is how we cheer up your audience, Bob.
Oh, they hear all this stuff on New Jersey Fight Back, which comes on at
but they don't hear poetry about
6 o'clock. Well, we're not supposed to be writing. That's what I was talking about before you came on. We're not supposed to be writing about this stuff because this is New Jersey and you, perfect together, and that's the code for all art these days. And we had a talk the other day where we mentioned that poetry is not real estate like art, which makes it tough for poets to.
And you can't bet on it like horses.
You can't bet on it like horses. I went down the list of all the arts. I thought, well, dance, you have a good, powerful dance lobby, and there's a dance critic in the paper, and a lot of rich people go to see dance.
Yeah, Valerie Sudol.
Yeah. All right,
Star Ledger.
All right, and if you go to art, that's like betting on a long shot. You can bet on a long shot.
Oh, sure.
And if you get to photography, these are image makers. You can always use a good photographer if they're putting out the right image. Providing they aren't shooting, realistic black and whites of, Newark, in which case the only place they're ever going to show is in Newark. In fact, they just had a show in Newark where they wouldn't show that kind of work in Newark. And that art, and then I came to poetry, and I thought, well, who cares about poetry? We have no, all we do is talk. We should just talk louder, maybe.
Well, I have a theory about that, which I'm sure you know I do, but okay. First place, poetry's quick. A couple of weeks ago, Joey Weil introduced a poem, which he didn't read, which I thought was great, but he introduced a poem by saying, to make a long story short, and I thought that was the best introduction I could imagine, because that's what poems do. They tell a long story quickly. And everything else is done in a hurry these days. I mean, you're using all kinds of avant-garde film techniques in commercials, jump cuts and all kind of almost kistoscopic speed. And poetry is a very rapid form of communication. And that's, I think, one of its greatest values.
Yeah, if it's telling a story. It doesn't have to tell a story.
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, Joey is a narrative poet, and there aren't too many narrative poems around. I don't think I have 4 or 5.
Yeah, you had poems there that were, and poems there that weren't. I was in an argument with someone a while back about that. I said, why do you always remember the plots of the poems? Like all poems don't have plots.
Oh, I heard that story. I heard that you wanted somebody to spend her entire life memorizing the poems in their entirety and giving up her own memories just to memorize that so that she'd have the complete and entire text of the poem, and the poem being the experience. The plot of the poem is not the experience, all of which is aesthetically completely valid and in terms of living your life totally impossible.
Well, since then I wrote a poem saying that I should do that. If I'm the one that...
Are you doing it, Bob?
No, I said I should empty my brain.
Notice the way the interviewee becomes the interviewer.
Yeah, I should empty my brain of all I know and fill it with the second verses of songs from before I was born.
Well, you just might end up... I mean, I have a terrible habit of recognizing tunes in the middle of the bridge. Saying, oh, I know what that song is, in the middle of the bridge, and having that kind of a memory is totally useless. There isn't a single thing I can think of that you can, put to use that way. But it's fun.
So, let's see. I'm going to talk a little bit more. I've got this lovely Wayne Smith album running on in the background. If you want to call up, so I'll take a break. If you want to call up and talk to the man himself, my godfather, as I refer. You're the only poet. When I got out of college, you're the only poet older than me that, with the exception of some New York poets I knew, seemed to be saying anything that mattered.
Hi, this is Joe Renner, and these are the Rixon tapes. Bob Rixon was a poet and broadcaster, a pioneer of freeform radio from 1981 at the FMU studios in New Jersey. He passed away on May 8th, 2014 at the age of 66. These tapes are a tribute to his work as a broadcaster and poet. Help this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you very much.